Oh gosh, I don't even want to consider that situation. I just think communication is so fundamental.
Preeti, thank you so much for joining us on This is Purdue. First and foremost, congratulations on your newest appointment. We're so excited for you. You are the Vice President of Research Innovation. We all know research is extremely important to Purdue and our identity here. So what does research innovation mean to you, and how will you continue to foster it here at Purdue?
Well, thank you, Kate. It's just a real pleasure to be part of this podcast. So, to me, research innovation is activity, scholarly and creative activity that has high impact. To me, research innovation is work that transforms society, that increases society's knowledge. But it doesn't necessarily have to be translational. It spans bench to bedside, really basic work to work that can be immediately applied. It spans all disciplines: business, humanities, the social sciences, life and health sciences, through the physical and natural sciences. I also think of research innovation as activity that can really support and boost the economy nationally and locally. And it's really critical to our core mission of education. Because, of course, at the end of the day, we are educating future researchers as well as consumers of research.
Absolutely. And in your new role, you'll help improve the university's competitiveness for funding, and you're also going to be building more research partnerships. What comes from that type of work?
Absolutely. So I'm glad you said, to your first question, when you asked about continuing research innovation, I'm glad you said continuing, right? Because research innovation is alive and well at Purdue. It's something thousands of faculty and students are doing daily. And the question really is, how do we continue to support research on campus while at the same time really elevating the research enterprise? And I think that happens from collaborations, building cohesive teams, looking ahead at what are going to be the next grand challenges, and really positioning ourselves as a university to address those challenges. So I think about it as collaborations with colleges and the Office of the Provost, with industry partnerships and commercialization, and global partnerships, just to name a few. But it's also about the pipeline, and it's about supporting students, supporting early career faculty, get ready for those larger competitive grants. The outcomes I see are multifold. They can be revolutionary technologies, new paradigms, rethinking, established research mores and looking at whether they are still relevant, and other discoveries that can really transform society for the better.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, I mean, the research being done here at Purdue impacts so many people, not only here in Indiana, but also worldwide. What initially made you interested in a career in research?
Yeah, so, I was trained as a speech language pathologist. So I was trained to provide behavioral intervention for individuals across the lifespan who have communication challenges. And this is many, many years ago. But during my years of clinical service delivery, it struck me that intervention strategies wouldn't work uniformly for different individuals, and you could never predict whom it would work for and whom it wouldn't benefit. So that led me to really question whether our intervention strategies were driven by a knowledge of underlying mechanisms. So that got me really interested specifically in the voice box, the larynx, which is the sound source for production of speech. And thinking about, what do we know about the larynx? What do we understand about the biology of voice production, in an attempt to have more effective interventions that could help individuals. So that was what really got me to start thinking about a research career and led me to pursue a PhD and then an academic career at Purdue.
And your introduction to speech language pathology was a personal one.
Right.
Your mom was a teacher and experienced, issues with her voice, a strain on her voice. Tell us a little bit more about, how this personal experience, later impacted you to pursue this career.
Yeah, absolutely. So my introduction to the discipline was actually through my father. My father was stuttered, and he had undergone what was then called speech correction. So I knew very vaguely and broadly about the disciplines of speech and hearing. And that's why I decided to pursue it. But then really early on, I was fascinated by the larynx, the voice box. And that was, as you pointed out, because my mother was a school teacher. School teachers have a very high risk for voice problems, in part driven by the need to speak for long periods of time,
Yes.
speaking loudly, and oftentimes in environments that are not very conducive for sound projection.
Sure.
So it's interesting because it's not really considered when you think about architectural engineering of classrooms. But that aside, I was really fascinated by why some people had vocal fatigue and would get tired, and why some others would not. And at that time, I thought the simple answer was understanding more about the biology of the larynx. And of course, it's a more complicated question. But that was what really got me interested in the voice box and studying that for now over 30 years.
Wow. And why do you think, some people experience that and others don't? What has your research led you to believe on that?
Yeah, so that's a difficult question to answer. And the answer is I honestly still don't know yet. What we know is that it's a combination of factors. We do know that excessive voice use does increase the risk for voice problems. And that's no surprise, right? The vocal folds are vibrating hundreds of times per second when we speak. And if you think about the amount of time that we engage in communication and speaking every day, that really adds up. So we do know that voice use and excessive voice use can result in voice problems. But voice disorders are also multifactorial. So there are many causes for voice problems. We know that environmental pollutants, cigarette smoke, vaping, simple pollutants in the air, those can really change the biology of the vocal folds. They cause tissue inflammation, which then causes voice problems. So something like an environmental pathogen or pollutant, along with excessive voice use, could interface together for a voice problem.
Sure, that makes sense. And our speech and language pathology graduate programs at Purdue are ranked in the top 10. Could you elaborate on the ways that you and your colleagues support people of all ages in enhancing, these speech language pathology skills?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because the 2024 rankings just came out last month, and we have actually climbed our rankings now by one spot each. So our speech language pathology program is now ranked number 2 in the country.
Wow.
And our audiology program is ranked number 8.
That
So
is
thank you so much.
exciting.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's a real testament to the contributions of our faculty and staff. We are really dedicated to our mission of stellar clinical education. And that covers many aspects of how we provide clinical education and how thoughtful we are about the courses we offer in the clinics as well as in the classroom. So some examples, of course, are that our students are always with clinical faculty as they're learning about how to provide clinical service. They are deeply involved in understanding the underlying theory that drives these interventions. So all our clinical practice is really grounded in evidence, and that's what makes it very effective. Our students are in the local community. We actually take our students to the local hospitals as well. So they work with local speech pathologists and audiologists. And in doing so, they can also bring discoveries that they learn in the classroom from the university directly to the community.
Sure.
And the community benefits from that as well.
Absolutely. And I want you to touch on for our listeners and our viewers that crucial quality of life, hearing, speaking, swallowing, reading, those are also important to all of us. So can you touch a little bit on what you all do when it comes to helping people with those potential issues that they might have?
Absolutely, Kate. So our expertise spans the lifespan from infancy all the way through supporting elderly individuals communicate more effectively. So when you think about challenges that infants may have, those span trouble with hearing and trouble with feeding. So our students are trained to provide hearing intervention and therapeutic as well as feeding intervention. And then that goes through school-age kids who need support with reading and early literacy, speech and language therapy, audiological services. This is where interventions with fluency can come in as well, as along with voice problems. And then we think about conditions that may impact communication as we enter occupations. So we think about occupational hazards from loud noise exposure.
Sure.
And of course, audiologists interface with hearing conservation programs. We can think about voice problems from occupations that stress the vocal folds. So we are thinking about proactive voice treatments to prevent that, all through supporting healthy aging. So this involves interventions with balance so you can prevent falls,
Sure.
supporting safe swallowing to prevent aspiration, supporting effective communication, supporting strong cognition and memory, helping older individuals stay oriented, supporting their memory, attention, and so on and so forth. So we really train our students to think about how we can be effectively serving society across the lifespan.
Those were great examples. Is there anything else that our viewers and our listeners might not know about speech, language, and hearing sciences at Purdue? Like, why is this so pertinent to everyone in the world?
Absolutely. So, speech, language, and hearing communication challenges don't discriminate geographically, right?
Sure.
So these are common conditions. They are prevalent across the globe. What many individuals don't, I guess, recognize about our professions is that we support the lifespan. In fact, we even have freshmen in our major who've only interacted with a speech pathologist or audiologist in elementary school. So they don't realize, in fact, what we can do and how we can support healthy aging. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that speech pathology and audiology will be amongst the fastest growing professions in the healthcare professions. They project that speech pathology employment is going to grow by 19% in the next 10 years. And for audiology, they project about 11% growth. So there clearly is an emerging need, especially as our population ages and we want them to age in a healthy way without compromising quality of life.
Sure. What would you say would be happening if Purdue wasn't doing this research?
Oh gosh, I don't even want to consider that situation. I just think communication is so fundamental, right? It's about everything we do.
Yes.
And it's not just verbal communication, it's written communication and literacy. It's communicating through sign language and gestures. It's communicating with technology. And in fact, we think about speech, language, and hearing sciences as serving all individuals with communication challenges. So I don't even want to conceptualize what it might be. In fact, I think what we need to do as a profession is really think about what those next challenges will be so we can really support our students to position themselves successfully for those challenges.
Absolutely. Can you share some of those usage, environmental, genetic factors that can impact voice quality? I know you mentioned smoking, kind of pollution, like you said. Any other ones that our listeners or viewers might be interested in?
Right. So another cause of voice disorders that's really emerging and more common right now is voice changes from acid reflux.
Oh.
So a lot of individuals will report changes in voice, more coughing after they have reflux that can be triggered for multiple reasons. It really depends on each individual. So for some individuals, it might be dietary choices. For others, it can be the times at which they ingest their meals. But we know that reflux appears to really compromise the biology of the tissue. This has been something we've shown in our lab, and others have shown this as well. So that is something that speakers should be thoughtful about, especially if they see their voices change after a meal. We, of course, know that pollution, whether through vaping or through environmental pollutants, can really challenge the voice. And then, of course, the fundamental conditions that affect voice quality are excessive voice use. So as and when the ability to use microphones so that you're not straining the voice as much can be really helpful. Other studies have shown that warming up the vocal folds before an intensive voice use session, much like we warm up our muscles before we work out.
Sure.
Something like that can be really beneficial as well.
So that's interesting. Before I record podcasts, they say like you shouldn't eat a big lunch or something, right?
Yes, of course.
And then have like hot water with lemon helps. The other thing I've learned is that I don't record first thing in the morning.
Absolutely.
I like to like warm up my voice.
Yeah, that's right.
With different meetings and stuff, and then I'll record, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that.
Yeah, so we all have certain times of day when we think our voices are optimal, and that can really differ for each speaker as well. So I do think it's helpful to think a little bit about what we like about our voices and when they sound most optimal to us as speakers, and then use those time periods to have the most or have the heaviest voice activity. It's interesting that you mentioned the warm water because you hear that universally.
Yes. Is that even true?
Well, so we know that the water you drink doesn't get anywhere near the larynx or the vocal folds,
Okay.
because if it did, you would cough.
Right.
So one of the reasons we actually have vocal folds is to protect the lungs. We don't want water entering the lungs.
Right.
So when the water first touches the vocal folds, you cough in order to expel the water out. So this is really interesting, and it's something that's fascinated me for decades now. Why do we feel better when we drink water? And I don't know the answer. Part of it might just be a placebo effect.
Yeah,
but
like feeling hydrated.
absolutely, part of it is that, of course, when you drink water, the upper parts of your airway are hydrated. So there could be some sort of feedback loop with sensory receptors in that area. But, at the end of the day, if you feel that something works for you, that's great, and we should keep doing it as long as it's not detrimental to other aspects of communication.
Sure. So the Purdue master's and doctoral programs in speech language pathology and audiology are the only top 10 programs that aren't attached to a university medical school. You were talking about this earlier. What helps our programs remain competitive with others that have the benefit of that association of having a medical school, with their university?
Right. So one of the challenges of not having a medical school is that it can really compromise the quality of clinical education students receive, because they may not get access to the population or understand the needs that medically compromised patients have when they go to a hospital. So, of course, that's something we think about when we are planning our courses and our curriculum. And one of the ways we have addressed this as a department is we have our students go along with our faculty to the local hospitals. So our students go to IU Arnett, they go to Franciscan, they go to all the outpatient clinics in the community, and they are with our faculty who can really help them understand not only the healthcare environment, but how to navigate it for success. And then, of course, our students, as part of the graduate coursework, do externships, and this can be anywhere in the 50 states. And the majority of students choose to do this in a healthcare or medical setting. So we really make sure that our students are getting that type of comprehensive education that will really set them up for success. That's something that's really important to the Department of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences.
That's great. You've been at Purdue for almost 20 years. What does the Boilermaker community mean to you? What role has Purdue had on your life?
Gosh, it's about the people. It always has been, and it remains that way. I chose to come to Purdue 19 years ago because of the people I met in this department. I just felt that they would mentor me, that they would nurture me to success and support me. I'm getting goosebumps as I talk about people. But it's really the reason I decided to come to Purdue, and this was 19 years ago. It's the reason I decided to stay and that I'm still here. It's a community that really advocates and sponsors others. It's a community that believes in collective excellence. And I think this is exactly what we need, both from the research enterprise, but also from an educational mission. This is a community that's always thinking about how we can do better and bigger things.
Yeah.
And that's really meaningful. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I came, and I have stayed.
You've impacted, I'm sure, hundreds, thousands of people with your research, with everything that you're doing here at Purdue. What's your favorite part of your research, though?
I'd say it's really making a difference. It's training students to be the next generation of researchers, seeing them really spark, light up when we find something in the laboratory, whether that's something we hypothesize or if it's the opposite. So it's really seeing that come alive. It's seeing increased awareness of phenomena in the classroom, and I'm interacting with students. But, as I have embraced leadership both within the department, but also now in the Office of Research, it's really about making an impact, right? It's about being able to advocate for others. It's about empowering others to be their best and to be successful. And there's something very fulfilling about that. That's just so very meaningful. The ability to lower barriers for others so that you can really elevate what they do. That's just special. And that's one of the reasons I have felt that strong leadership can be really very meaningful and important.
What would you say your next giant leap is, personally or professionally?
I'm really looking forward to supporting the Office of Research. We started with this question.
Yes.
And I really think this is just such a great environment for research excellence, where we already are excellent, but we can do so much more to elevate all aspects of our research mission. And I think this position in the Office of Research really lends itself so well to that. So I'm looking forward to lowering barriers that faculty and students experience. I'm looking forward to enabling more clear communication, bringing together teams efficiently, streamlining some of our operations so we can really support the mission and really enable success across the board. So to me, that would be really something that that would be fulfilling, exciting, and I would hope would be of substantive impact across the Purdue community.
Absolutely. I can tell you love your job and you're very fulfilled.
Thank you.
Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us. Is there anything else you think that's important to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I think I probably shared 1% of what we do in the Department of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences. And I know this podcast has broad viewership. So we'd love for students in this department to really be able to engage with our broader Purdue alumni network, for our students to learn about the scope of where alumni are and their successes, and also for other individuals to learn about what we do and why it's so meaningful and why so many of us in this department do what we do. So anything that our alumni can do and viewers can do, visiting our website. We'd love for them to interact and meet with our students. And I think that would be a lot of fun for everyone in the unit.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kate.